In my opinion, Hunters have the best kit for Prismatic, and the good thing about this build is that it's easily accessible throughout the campaign, and it actually helped me a lot throughout the Legend campaign, and once I got a couple things unlocked, I could pretty much speedrun through it easily. This setup literally provides everything you need, including great survivability, great damage, including crowd control, and boss DPS as well. This is honestly the best kit that I've ran on the Hunter by far. Now, the exotic you're going to need to make this work is the Liar's Handshake. Now, if you have access to the exotic class items and you have one of those with the Liar's Handshake perk, I would highly recommend using that because you can also get access to another perk in the first column. But if you don't have a good roll in that yet, definitely have your base Liar's Handshake. With this perk, Cross Counter, using your arc melee ability or being hit by a melee attack will allow you to follow up with an extremely powerful melee counterpunch that will heal you. Now, the reason that's going to be so good is because the arc melee we have on the Hunter is Combination Blow. Again, it allows you to strike the target, and it can have stacking damage up to 3 times and refills your class ability. So again, the combination pretty much goes, you melee a target and kill them, you dodge your enemies with Gambler's Dodge to get the melee back, and then you melee them again, and you continue this cycle. And the other cool thing is that if you decide to rock Grapple, again, it'll allow you to grapple melee. The melee can actually benefit from the bonus melee damage as well, so that's why I'm going to be using Grapple here. Now, just with that, you have good melee damage and survivability just with the Combination Blow melee, but the aspects make it even better. So first up, put on Stylus Executioner. Defeating a target affected by any elemental debuff grants invisibility and true sight. After performing a Stylus Execution, your next melee attack, while invisible, weakens targets. So if you don't kill them with the first melee, they're going to be weakened, so you can kill them again. But the cool thing with this one versus the Void Stylus Executioner is that the Void one, you had to have a Void debuff. With this one, as long as it's any type of debuff, you can go invisible, which makes it extremely easy, especially when paired with our other aspect, Winter's Shroud. Dodging slows nearby targets, slowing targets briefly increases your class ability regeneration. We really don't need the, class ability regeneration part, but dodging slows nearby targets. With Gambler's Dodge, you're going to be dodging near targets anyway to get the melee back, so they're automatically going to be debuffed with slow and or freeze if you dodge, multiple times. And as long as you melee them, you're pretty much going invisible every melee. It's literally like having the Assassin's Cowl perk with going invisible, but you also have the bonus damage from Liar's Handshake as well. Now for our fragments, these are the 5 I chose. Out of the 21, there are definitely a couple that you could substitute in here, but these are the ones that I like. So first up, Facet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability Final Blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy, and it's a +10 to Discipline. With this build, you're going to have some sort of buff across the board. If you get multiple melee kills, that's amplified. Once you go invisible, that's a Void buff. We can also get Radiant with a perk on the artifact, which we'll talk about later. So pretty much, you're always going to have Facet of Sacrifice on. Next is Facet of Devotion. Defeating targets afflicted by stasis or strand debuffs grant bonus light transcendence energy. It is a +10 to strength. The cool thing here is that you're always going to be slowing targets with the Gambler's Dodge, and if you decide to use the grapple and grapple melee, you're also going to be able to unravel targets from that. So there's pretty much going to be a strand debuff on the field at all times, so you can take heavy advantage of that. Now next is Facet of Courage. Your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted by darkness debuffs. That is a +10 to Discipline. Again, like I said, you're going to be slowing targets, unraveling targets almost constantly. So now our melee ability is going to be even stronger on top of that, as long as they're affected by slow, unravel, or whatever. Next up is Facet of Protection. Now, since we are going to be in a crowd of people, this is going to be a big one. So while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased. It is a +10 to Strength. Again, this is going to be really good for extra damage resistance. Now, the last one I really like, which is Facet of Purpose. So when you pick up an Orb of Power, it's either going to grant you a buff from whatever your super is. Now, the reason I didn't talk about the super first is because of this. And the reason I am rocking Silence and Squall in particular is so I can take advantage of Frost Armor. Again, this is going to be the new stasis way for damage resistance. It's basically Woven Mail, but for stasis, and it can stack up to 5 times, so you're getting a lot of damage resistance from this. Now, if you didn't want to use Silence and Squall, that's totally fine. If you're rocking the Golden Gun, you're going to gain Restoration when you pick up Orbs of Power. If you decide to use the new Storm's Edge super, every time you pick up an Orb of Power, you're going to gain Amplified, which it's kind of redundant since you're going to be amplified pretty much after a couple of melee kills anyway. If you decide to go with the Shadow Shot Deadfall, again, that's a tether that will tether a bunch of targets in a wide range. You can get the Overshield for the Void subclass, and then if you wanted to go with Silk Strike, you will get Woven Mail. But to be honest, the Frost Armor is just way too good with Silence and Squall on, and it's really good for crowd control as well. Under the artifact, for the Weapon Champion mods, you can choose what you like. In the second column, Logic Reductor, Overcharged Armory, Saint's Inspiration, and Winning Hand all give bonuses to those origin trait perks. So depending on what weapons you're using, again, look into these and definitely pick them out accordingly. The good thing with this build is that you can use any weapon here, which I'll talk about when we get to the weapons portion, but it is pretty versatile in that regard. In the third column, Elemental Siphon, Press the Advantage, and Threaded Blast are decent. I would recommend Threaded Blast here because you can create a tangle with the grapple melee. So destroying a tangle with a strand weapon creates a large and more damaging explosion. Would recommend this one. For Press the Advantage and Elemental Siphon, you can look into those if you'd like. If you want to do Overload Sword, again, that's totally fine. Or Creeping Chill, Stasis Weapon Final Blows. Against slowed or frozen targets, release a burst that slows. You could totally do that as well. But the fourth and fifth columns are the ones that are very important. First up in the fourth column, we have Void Hegemony. While you have the Void or Prismatic subclass equipped, defeating weakened targets provides a small Void Overshield. Now, if you recall correctly, we can actually weaken targets from coming out of invisibility with the melee from Stylus Executioner. So on top of having Frost Armor, we can also have Void Overshield from this. Now, granted, it won't be all that often considering how strong the melee is, but again, you can take advantage of that. Next is Radiant Orb. So while you have the Solar or Prismatic subclass equipped, picking up an Orb of Power makes you Radiant. So that's how we're going to get Radiant. Again, that's another buff that we can add on to ourselves to keep up the Fragments. Next up is Galvanic Armor. Highly recommend this one. While you have an Arc or Prismatic subclass equipped, incoming damage from combatants is reduced while amplified. We can become amplified very quickly with the melee or arc weapons if we decide to use them. So that's even more damage resistance on top of what we already have. In the fifth column, you can look into Shield Crush. So while you have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or a Void Overshield, your melee recharges faster and deals increased damage. And while you're Amplified or Radiant, your Grenade recharges faster and deals increased damage. Now, the melee recharge really isn't necessary, but you do get free increased damage with the melee and faster grenade regen and increased damage with that too. So basically having Shield Crush on is free extra damage for those abilities. And then I like Transference here. So gain increased grenade and melee damage while Transcendent, weapon final blows while Transcendent, refund light and dark energy after Transcendence ends. Now, before we dive into weapons and armor, let's talk about what stats you should focus on. First up, we talk about every video, try to have tier 10 100 resilience. It's a 30% damage reduction, and you definitely want to take advantage of that, especially if you're going to be hopping in the Legend campaign, the new raid, the co-op mode for the campaign. Basically, you want this on at all times. Now, the second stat that I would focus on is Discipline. Discipline is tied to how fast we can get that grenade back. And again, having that grapple melee back as quickly as possible is going to be good for us. We don't need mobility for the class item or strength for the melee because we can get those back just by using Combination Blow and Gambler's Dodge. Recov you don't necessarily need considering we can get our health back pretty quickly. So I would focus on Intellect as the last stat. Again, Intellect determines how fast we can get our super back, and obviously we want to take advantage of that as much as possible. Ignore my 80 strength here. I tried to work out the armor set. This is just how it ended up. But like I said, definitely Resilience and then Discipline as your top two. Like I mentioned earlier, you can honestly use any weapons here and the build is going to work extremely well. If you want to go with the classic melee combo of using Tractor Cannon with the Suppress and Weaken on top of a 1-2 punch shotgun, you could totally do so. 1-2 punch pretty much allows you to do even more melee damage as long as you hit every pellet or nearly every pellet with the shotgun. Again, I have the enhanced version here with my sword breaker, and then you can put on a primary. Again, if you have an energy weapon with 1-2 punch, put on a primary in the connect slot. This will work. Granted, it doesn't do as much damage as it used to, but it is still a very strong combo. Outside of that, this weapon combo is one that I really like. I have a crafted Rufus Fury here with Demo Frenzy on top of Vendetta Kindness with Beacon Rounds and Volt Shot, and then Microcosm. Again, this is the new Trace Rifle exotic. It's kinetic. It does a lot of damage for a heavy Trace Rifle. It's really good for that precision damage. I like this combo here. I mean, heck, if you wanted to rock the Still Hunt exotic sniper, you totally can. It's like having the Golden Gun Super and Silence on Squall now. This thing is extremely powerful even without Celestial Nighthawk, so you could totally use that as well. Moral of the story, use whatever weapon combination that you like. Just make sure that the element type matches a couple things. Number one being the Siphon mods on the helmet if you want to create orbs from rapid weapon final blows. Number two on the chest piece, which is going to be the reserve mods. Again, I have strand reserves on, so I have more shotgun ammo for my sword breaker here. And then on the boots, lastly, which is going to be the weapon surge mods if you want bonus damage for your weapons. Now to go over what armor mods to actually look for. So starting with the helmet here, definitely hands-on. You gain bonus super energy on melee kills. And then with Dynamo, it reduces your super cooldown when using your class ability near targets. Again, this is good for that Combination Blow, Gambler's Dodge combination there. And if you have the space, definitely put on a Siphon mod if you can. On the gauntlets, I'm rocking double impact induction, so causing damage with a powerful melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown, and then heavy-handed, so your powered melee final blows create orbs of power. Note, this is on a 10-second timer, but it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to create an orb off your melee every 10 seconds. You can reduce the time by putting on multiple copies of heavy-handed, and if you want to do that, that's totally fine. On the chest piece, like I said, you can use whatever reserve mod that you like and definitely pair that up with some resistance mods depending on the activity. You can switch it out for any of the ones here. On the boots, I'm using Innervation, so it reduces my grenade cooldown each time I pick up an Orb of Power. You can put on Recuperation for the health back on Orb pickup if you're in a tougher activity, but with all of the resistances and survivability mechanics you have with this build, you don't necessarily need Recuperation. And then I'm rocking double Arc Weapon Surge, but again, make sure the Weapon Surge matches whatever weapons that you decide to use here. But essentially, your arc weapons gain a small bonus to damage. While you have any armor charge, your armor charge now decays over time. Essentially, when you collect an Orb of Power, you gain an armor charge. With this build, you can have a max of 3, and with these blue mods, it actually puts a timer on that armor charge. So at 3 armor charges, we have 30 seconds of bonus weapon damage. For the class item, I would highly recommend Time Dilation. So your decaying armor charge has a longer duration, so that 10 seconds that I mentioned previously actually gets bumped up to 15 seconds. So at 3 armor charges, we have 45 seconds of that bonus weapon damage. Next is Reaper. Shortly after using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an Orb of Power. If you did want to switch this for something like Powerful Attraction, again, automatically collects nearby Orbs of Power when you activate your class ability. This one's a little better for team play, especially if your teammates are making a lot of orbs. You can just automatically collect them around you. And then lastly, I would recommend Bomber. Reduces grenade cooldown when using your class ability. And that's really it. I really don't have much else to say about this build. Honestly, it's very user-friendly, being able to just melee, dodge, go invisible, create Orbs of Power, gain Radiant, have potential Overshield, gain Frost Armor for picking up Orbs of Power. You can use any weapon combination that you want. You get great damage resistance, great weapon damage, great ad control, access to good boss damage as well, whether it's from the melee or golden gun or still hunt or whatever you decide to use. This build for the hunter really has it all. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is my Liar's Handshake Prismatic Hunter build. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm actually going to put the dim link for this build in the description. So if you want to copy everything that I'm using, down to the subclass, the weapons, the armor mods, even the drip, if you'd like, it's going to include ornaments and the shader as well. So if you want to copy all that, go for it, test out yourself. Let me know if you like something in particular with this, whether it's a weapon, an armor mod, something under the Prismatic subclass. There are plenty of things you can substitute in for this build and still make it extremely good. In any event, if you enjoyed watching, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on that bell next to notifications so you don't miss out on any other Final Shape builds I'm going to be dropping here on the channel. If you didn't know, we live stream here on YouTube and then also over on Twitch. Again, there's going to be the Salvation's Edge raid. There's going to be the new activity to get the exotic class items, the co-op mode. There's going to be plenty of stuff to do. So if you want to hop in for any of that, again, hop in the chat. And then also, if you want to be proactive, join my Discord. Again, people are going to be looking to play activities together. So hop on in. We're also talking about anime, tech, and plenty of other games as well. Lastly, if you want to help support the channel even more so I can continue making this content for you guys, you can always look into becoming a member. If you don't know what a membership is, it's essentially like a Twitch subscription. Again, you're going to get access to the emotes, the monthly badges, and the big thing, which is getting early access to all of my videos. So if you want to look into becoming a member, all you have to do is press the join button, next subscribe, and that'll give you a rundown with all the details you need. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been your boy. We'll catch you in the next one. Cheers!